The night air was crisp, carrying a slight chill that wrapped around me like a warning. I stood outside my house, keys in hand, but hesitated before unlocking the door. Something felt off. Maybe it was the way Lauren, my wife of 7 years, had been acting lately. She was always glued to her phone, smiling at messages I wasn't privy to. Her late nights at the gym, the sudden interest in dressing up even for casual outings, and the emotional distance between us. It all built up like an invisible wall. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The living room was dimly lit, the scent of lavender lingering in the air. Our home felt the same, yet everything was different. My gut twisted as I thought about the last few weeks. Lauren and I had always been a strong couple. At least, that's what I thought. We met in college, two young dreamers who believed love was enough to conquer anything. I worked tirelessly as an IT consultant, pulling in long hours so we could afford our dream house in the suburbs. Meanwhile, she worked part-time as a freelance designer, a job that gave her flexible hours. At first, I didn't question her schedule. If anything, I admired her independence. But lately, those freelance projects required her to leave the house at odd hours, sometimes returning past midnight. I confronted her a few times. "Who keeps calling you this late?" I had asked one evening. She laughed, brushing it off. "Just a client, Ethan. You worry too much." Maybe I did. But doubt was a dangerous thing. Once planted, it grew like an uncontrollable weed, twisting around every thought and suffocating trust. The turning point came a week ago. I had taken the day off, hoping to surprise Lauren with breakfast. She wasn't in bed when I woke up, and her phone sat on the kitchen counter, screen still glowing from a recent notification. Curiosity got the best of me. I picked it up, my heart pounding as I read the message. "Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again, babe." My hands went cold. The sender's name was saved as Gym Trainer. She walked in a minute later, hair damp from the shower, towel wrapped around her body. I turned the screen toward her. "Care to explain this?" I asked, my voice colder than I intended. Her expression flickered, shock, then something else. She recovered quickly. "Ethan, it's nothing. Just a joke between friends." I stared at her, searching for the woman I thought I knew. But she was slipping away, turning into someone I barely recognized. "A joke," I repeated, my grip tightening around the phone. She stepped closer, placing a hand on my chest. "You're overreacting. I love you. There's nothing to worry about." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But that night, she worked late again. I called the gym. No one had seen her. I texted her. No reply. The next morning, she came home smelling like men's cologne. I knew, then, that my marriage was built on a lie. But I wasn't going to confront her just yet. No, I needed proof. Real proof. And I was going to get it. Doubt was no longer just a nagging thought. It had become a consuming force. I needed to catch Lauren in the act, not just for my own sanity, but to ensure that when the truth came out, there would be no room for manipulation or lies. I started by being more observant. Lauren's schedule was erratic, but there was a pattern. She would leave the house around 7 p.m., claiming she had a design consultation or a late-night workout. Yet, she never returned home sweaty. Instead, she smelled of expensive cologne, wore fresh makeup, and had an unmistakable glow. I decided to follow her. On Friday evening, I told her I had to work late and that I'd probably sleep at my office. She seemed relieved, almost too eager to kiss me goodbye before she left. Instead of going to work, I waited in my car, parked a few houses down. At exactly 7:15 p.m., she walked out, dressed far too elegantly for a work meeting. A short, tight dress, high heels, and that perfume, the one she only used on special occasions. My stomach turned, but I forced myself to stay focused. She got into her car and drove off. I followed at a safe distance. After 20 minutes of weaving through city streets, she pulled into the parking lot of an upscale hotel. Not a restaurant, not a bar, a hotel. My heart pounded in my chest. I watched as she stepped out, her phone pressed to her ear. Moments later, a man appeared from the lobby. Tall, broad-shouldered, and all too familiar, Jason. Jason was a so-called family friend, someone I had trusted. He and I had known each other since college. He had been my best man at our wedding. We had spent holidays together. And now, he was meeting my wife at a hotel. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to charge inside and confront them. But I held back. This wasn't the time for emotion. It was time for proof. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Lauren laughed as she wrapped her arms around Jason's neck, pulling him into a kiss. Not just any kiss, one filled with passion, familiarity, betrayal. They entered the hotel together, and I sat there, numb. I had suspected, but seeing it with my own eyes felt like a knife to the chest. For a moment, I considered what to do next. Should I burst in and make a scene? Should I call her right now and hear her lie to me in real time? No, that wasn't enough. I needed a plan. Over the next 2 days, I dug deeper. I hired a private investigator. If she was willing to risk everything for an affair, then I wanted to uncover everything. By Monday morning, I had surveillance footage, screenshots of texts, and even records of her credit card payments to the hotel. It was worse than I thought. This wasn't just a fling. It had been going on for months. They had been sneaking around while I was out working my ass off to provide for us. Jason wasn't just my best friend. He was like a brother to me. And now, he was sleeping with my wife. The rage inside me boiled, but I refused to act without strategy. I wasn't going to just expose them. I was going to make sure they both paid the price. I spent the next few days preparing. Lauren still had no idea that I knew. She continued with her little charade, kissing me goodbye in the mornings, sending me texts about how much she loved me, and making dinner as if she wasn't stabbing me in the back every chance she got. I played along, acting as if nothing was wrong. But behind the scenes, I was setting the stage for her downfall. I gathered all the evidence into a neat little folder and made 3 copies. One for my divorce lawyer. 2, one for Jason's wife. Yes, he was married too. 3, one for her parents, who had always thought she was the perfect daughter. But I wasn't done yet. I had something bigger planned. I waited for the perfect moment to strike. And that moment was coming sooner than she could ever expect. The night of reckoning had arrived. Lauren had no clue what was coming. She had grown so comfortable in her lies that she never suspected I was one step ahead. Her birthday was coming up, and she had been planning a small, intimate dinner with close friends and family at our house. The guest list included her parents, my parents, and Jason and his wife, Emily. The irony wasn't lost on me. She was bold enough to invite the man she was sleeping with to our home, while his wife sat clueless beside him. I let her plan every detail. I let her believe that everything was perfect, because tonight, she would be unmasked. The guests arrived at 7 p.m. sharp. Lauren was glowing, dressed in a sleek red dress, her smile wide as she greeted everyone. Jason arrived a few minutes later, acting as if he weren't the snake that he was. His wife, Emily, stood beside him, unsuspecting, her hand resting on his arm. I poured myself a drink, watching the scene unfold, the anticipation building inside me. Then, when everyone was settled, I stood up and cleared my throat. Thank you all for coming tonight. It means a lot to me and Lauren. But before we eat, I have a special surprise. Lauren's eyes sparkled. Oh, Ethan, you didn't have to. Oh, but I did, I interrupted. I pulled out a remote and pressed play on the large TV screen. The room went silent as the footage began rolling. Lauren and Jason, kissing in the hotel lobby, entering the elevator together, holding hands like lovers. Gasps echoed through the room. Jason's wife, Emily, covered her mouth in horror. Lauren's parents looked like they had been struck by lightning. Lauren's face drained of color. Ethan, she stammered, but I raised a hand. Shut up. I turned to Jason, whose face had turned pale. And you were my best friend. My brother. How long? He swallowed hard, but no words came. Emily stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. You disgusting piece of... She didn't even finish her sentence before throwing her wine in Jason's face. Lauren turned to me, eyes pleading. Ethan, I can explain. Explain? I laughed bitterly. Explain how you snuck around behind my back? How you disrespected our marriage, our home? Tears welled in her eyes. I never meant to hurt you. Oh, but you did. I turned to Emily and handed her the folder containing every piece of evidence. File for divorce. You deserve better. She looked at me, her hands shaking as she clutched the documents. Then, without another word, she stormed out. Jason, in a panic, tried to follow, but I grabbed his arm. You don't get to run from this. You destroyed 2 marriages tonight. And trust me, I'll make sure you pay for it. Lauren collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. But I felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. Just relief. Because I won. The room was filled with silence, except for Lauren's sobs. Her once proud posture had crumbled, and she sat hunched over, shaking. Jason stood frozen, his face still wet from the wine Emily had thrown at him. He looked from me to the door where his wife had just stormed out, as if debating whether to chase after her or salvage what little dignity he had left. I made the choice for him. "Get the hell out of my house," I said, my voice dangerously calm. Jason opened his mouth as if to protest, but one look at me, and he knew better. He turned and rushed out the door, calling Emily's name as he disappeared into the night. Lauren's parents were still in shock, unable to meet my gaze. Her mother clutched a napkin in her hands, twisting it nervously. Her father, usually a man of firm words, just shook his head. "Lauren," he finally said, his voice filled with disappointment. "What have you done?" She lifted her tear-streaked face, but no words came out. I let out a slow breath and turned to my parents. "I'm sorry you had to see this. You raised me to be an honest man. I thought I had an honest wife." My mother reached out and squeezed my arm. No words were needed. Her eyes told me everything. I grabbed the divorce papers I had prepared and threw them on the table in front of Lauren. "Sign them. We're done." She looked at the papers as if they were a death sentence. "Ethan, please, we can talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about," I said, my voice sharp. "I deserve better. And you? You deserve exactly what's coming to you." She reached for my hand, but I stepped back. I had wasted enough time on her. I turned and walked away, leaving her to face the wreckage of the life she had destroyed. Over the next few weeks, the fallout was exactly as I expected. Lauren tried to fight the divorce at first, but with the overwhelming evidence I had, she didn't stand a chance. She ended up losing everything. The house, mine. The car, mine. Her reputation, shattered. Word spread quickly about what she had done, and soon enough, her clients started dropping her. No one wanted to work with a cheater and a liar. Jason? He got what he deserved too. Emily followed through with the divorce, taking half of everything. His cushy life was ripped out from under him, and he was left scrambling to rebuild. I didn't care. They both made their choices. And now, they were paying for them. Months passed, and life moved on. For me, at least. Lauren? Not so much. I had heard from mutual acquaintances that she was struggling, financially, emotionally, socially. The clients she lost never returned. Some of her so-called friends distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with the woman who destroyed her marriage in such a public way. She tried to reach out to me a few times. A text here, a voicemail there. All ignored. I had nothing left to say. I had closed that chapter of my life. One evening, after a long day at work, I decided to stop by a local cafe for a cup of coffee. As I walked inside, I nearly turned around and left. Because sitting in the farthest corner of the cafe, hunched over a table with a cup of untouched coffee, was Lauren. She looked different. The confident, well-dressed woman I had once known was gone. In her place was someone who looked defeated, dark circles under her eyes, her hair in a messy bun, her clothes far less polished than before. She must have felt my gaze because she looked up and froze. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then, hesitantly, she stood and walked toward me. "Ethan, hey," I sighed, knowing I wouldn't be able to avoid this conversation forever. "Hey." She bit her lip. "I know you probably don't want to see me, but can we talk?" I glanced at my watch. I had time. "Fine. 5 minutes." We sat down, and she let out a slow breath. I wanted to say I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "For everything." I didn't respond. "I ruined my life, Ethan. I ruined us. And I can't take it back." "No, you can't." She flinched at my words, but nodded. "I lost everything," she admitted, her voice breaking. "My career is gone. My friends barely talk to me. My own parents don't look at me the same way." Silence hung between us for a moment before she whispered, "Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" I considered her words carefully before answering. "Maybe," I said. "But forgiveness doesn't mean I want you back. It doesn't mean things will ever be okay between us." Tears welled in her eyes. "I miss you," she whispered. I shook my head. "You miss what you lost. Not me." Her shoulders slumped. And in that moment, I knew. She finally understood. She had destroyed something irreplaceable, and she would never get it back. I stood up, placing some cash on the table for my coffee. "Take care of yourself, Lauren." Then, without another word, I walked away. And this time, I didn't look back.